Thank you for auditing Professor Sky's Record Review, the always positive new music review show hosted by a French professor who has either lost his mind or is purely looking for clickbait with his title, Is 6ix9ine the New Tupac? Listen, I'm going to get to it. It's not clickbait, I promise. I do have a point here to make. And it's a point that came after watching the documentary that's now on Hulu, 6ix9ine, the Saga of Danny Hernandez. Now I should say, my last video was called 6ix9ine is Trump and it's our fault. I think it's a pretty good video. I think I justify the clickbaity nature of the title. I'll put a link to it up there. I would like you to watch it. I think it's one of my better videos in terms of linking together politics and pop culture. This documentary pointed out that he was sentenced the same day as Trump's impeachment. Interesting point, interesting parallel. But I am going to legitimately make an argument for how 6ix9ine and Tupac can be seen as a part of a continuum. How 6ix9ine is the new Tupac. Caveat with literally a fraction of the talent. So before you get mad, I'm not saying that they're the same in terms of talent, but they might be the same in many other important ways. But before I launch into the polemic, let me give you a quick review of the documentary itself. Let me tell you the good parts first. I mean, any documentary, there's two things have to happen. It has to be watchable, and you have to learn something. I watched this, I learned a lot. I was never bored. I liked a lot of the interviews. I liked a lot of the style, the way it really got into New York City, got really into the places where he grew up. Interviewed people from around his neighborhood from sort of all walks of life, even like some hipster artist dude who's trying to gentrify 6ix9ine's neighborhood. There's a lot of really great parts to it, and especially just it provides a good overview. I would say the bad part is the filmmaker could never quite figure out how much he was the star of the show. So the whole thing kind of opens with him saying, I'm obsessed about knowing the truth about people. And, you know, the first thing that always happens if you're watching a documentary and the filmmaker uses the word I, is you go, who the hell are you? And, oh my God, who the hell cares? And the movie kind of ends with him, like, wondering, like, am I just exploiting 6ix9ine? But it's okay. It's not too much. But it doesn't quite, it sort of is halfway between that kind of Michael Moore documentary and a more neutral documentary. My main issue is that it actually does have a more interesting movie hidden inside of it. The most interesting that the movie gets is when it addresses one of the central themes, which is the theme of clout. And I thought it would have perhaps done better to have a title just be called Clout Chaser, the 6ix9ine story, because it really is a very interesting analysis of how clout or internet fame, how it exists, how it feeds itself, how it destroys the people that search for it. It's really quite interesting, and I think that should have been the through line. But what do I know? I'm just a French professor who is desperately trying to not lesson plan. I'm doing this video instead of getting ready for my 3 classes today because I feel like it. It was a little too much like, is he Danny or is he 6ix9ine? Good person, bad person, persona, personality, like this whole kind of a tired trope of rap documentaries where, you know, is the person their public facade or not? But still, it was never bad. The documentary was never bad. It was always good. There were just certain points where you go, they just missed it there. One thing, you know, I really learned a lot about him. I feel like I really did. I was sort of going into it thinking, am I just going to come out of this like with so much empathy and love for this person? Is my whole opinion going to be changed? And it really isn't. You really get the image of this guy as this kid, right? He's 23 now, 24? He's a kid. I mean, he's a kid for his entire fame. Just a very sponge-like person. Just kind of like absorbs everything around him and then figured out at an early age that if you shock people, people will give you money. That's just it. He just figured it out. So he started as a fashion guy, like just wearing shirts that said AIDS and just walking around and waiting for people to take pictures of him, and then he became famous with that. The documentary kind of spends a little bit of time on the idea that he had a stepfather who was killed and that really changed him. A lot of it seems to be like, what made him into such a jerk? How did he become this great villain? I think it's pretty fair to say that it's just his addiction to fame. It's an addiction to getting shocks, to getting people to be amazed and outraged. I don't think it's a quest for money. I don't even necessarily think, the movie says it's a quest for fame. I think it's more of a quest for identity. Just he wants to be the most famous person in the world for being shocking. And there's all these interesting examples of how far he goes to chase clout. You know, first he wears the shirt, and then he dyes his hair, and they actually take you to the place where he gets his hair dyed. I thought that was a nice detail. Then he gets face tattoos. But most interestingly, he goes to Slovakia, like, because there's like 1,000 people who like his music, and he plays his first concert in Slovakia. You see how far he'll go to basically start his career in a country he has no connection to. About how he's able to like use Trippie Redd to further his fame, and then turn against Trippie Redd, convert that love to beef to further. It's just, you really get the sense of how adept he is, how skilled he is at just manipulating the system and manipulating people's stupidity, and just being the face of that stupidity, the tattooed, angry face of that stupidity. Tupac. Let's get to the point here. In 2020, when he was released from prison, I did a quick search before this video, like, has anyone else made this point? Do you know who else thinks that Tupac is the same thing as 6ix9ine? 6ix9ine does. Now, I don't think he's like Tupac for the reasons that he stated, you know, that they both went to jail. Okay, big deal. A lot of musicians go to jail. It's not just because he's loved and hated. I think this is the key. 6ix9ine, much like Tupac, is before even being a musician or an artist or a musical artist, they are both actors. That is their craft. And they both, I don't know if 6ix9ine is going to die because of it, but his life was at least ruined by the adherence to method acting. They are both very, I'm not talking about tattoos and guns and drugs, I'm not interested in that, although you could make that comparison. I'm not going to talk about the fact that 6ix9ine considered Treyway Records to be something like Death Row, where they're both kind of like run by semi-criminals or full criminals. I'm not going to get into that. It really is this belief in acting and the ability to use charisma to get what you want. The thing about 6ix9ine is he has so much charisma. He has so much charisma, he doesn't know what to do with it. Same thing with Tupac. Both of them, they just have this thing about them where people around them lose their mind and are attracted to them. Now, I would say Tupac also had the advantage of being extremely talented, which I don't think 6ix9ine has. I don't think so. I don't think that makes him I don't think he's untalented, but he doesn't have nearly the talent of Tupac. But it's this belief in acting, that if you act a certain way, you will get a certain result. So if you don't know about method acting, it's a style of acting in which you get into the character and you never leave. You know, Marlon Brando is famous for this. Jim Carrey was famous for this. Jared Leto was famous for this in Suicide Squad. I am the Joker. Who's Jared? That kind of acting thing. And the idea is that you get a better performance out of it in the end. I don't know. I don't know if it works, but I know it's a thing. Both 6ix9ine and Tupac were method actors of gangsters. I think that's ultimately what killed them. The same gang, too, the Bloods. Tupac is a theater kid who moved around a lot, grew up mostly in the Bay Area, and then like he moves to LA and all of a sudden he like adopts this whole gang mentality and acts like he's always been in a gang. And then gang members don't, you know, and then he like actually ends up advertising gang membership to young people all around the world. But it was just an act. It was a way to seem harder than he was. It was a way to fit into the zeitgeist of the time. It was a way to get credibility, to get authenticity. And ultimately, he was murdered. And, you know, we don't know why he was murdered. We don't know who he was murdered. Most people who have studied the case think it's because of his gang affiliation. He was killed because of this desire to play a gangster. 6ix9ine, this documentary makes it very clear, was not a blood growing up. He was just a kid. He worked at a bodega, seemed like a nice enough guy, you know, maybe looking for a stepfather. But this whole movie shows, like when he made his first video with members of the Blood Gang, he brought them bandanas. He brought them red bandanas so that it would give him more cred. And after making the video, he joined the gang. He replaced his manager with a member of the gang. He started like doing, you know, really expressly expressing himself as a gang member. And this would, of course, lead to him getting kidnapped, to him ultimately going to jail where he ratted out his fellow gang members. And I think realistically, it's going to lead to his death. I mean, I hope not. I don't wish death on anybody, but it seems like the most common trajectory. So that's the way that I think he is a lot like Tupac. Not in terms of talent, but in terms of charisma and the belief in character, in method acting, in just really giving into this role of a gangster. So there you go. There's my review of the documentary. Definitely watch it. I mean, it's totally worth an hour and a half. It's way more interesting than whatever else you were going to watch. Lots of great footage, great interviews, clips, everything. And the one thing that 6ix9ine knows how to do is make you care about him, even when you don't want to. All right, well, I am going to finally go off and prepare my lesson planning. Let's see, in 111, we're working on expressions with the verb avoir. In 112, we are working on passé composé, which is quite difficult. And then in my class on comedy, we're sort of finishing up Le Bourgeois Gentilhomme. Probably some crossover there too. All right, well, until next time, I'll probably be doing the Lana Del Rey album some point this weekend. Oh, and join my Patreon if you want. Give me money to buy records. I don't keep any of the money, I just buy records with it. All right, there's the camera.